Welcome to Harry's Hook. I am a journalist, big fan of boxing. I've written published articles on it. I also train and spar. The problem child Jake Paul KO'd Andre August in the very first round of their fight. You saw the title of the video. I'm going to talk about what we learned about Jake and how he's improving as a fighter. Now, your response is going to be, Harry, they fought for less than one round. How could we have learned anything? Well, I'm going to milk the hell out of that one round and see if we can make some custard. I'm also going to share some thoughts I have about Jake Paul and his place in boxing. But first, if you enjoy this content, do me a solid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. I appreciate your support. Now, Jake Paul had talked about improving his footwork, and I gotta say, that's what jumped out to me right away. Immediately, right at the start, he was bouncing on the balls of his feet, staying very light. Kinda similar to how KSI was against Tommy Fury. Paul bouncing around like that in the beginning foreshadowed the improved footwork that we saw through that round. His linear movement in particular got my attention. He did a good job sliding in and out of range, managing the distance both with his feet and with an active lead hand. We also learned that Jake is not only refining his footwork, but also his tactics and craft. One of the ways that he did this was by incorporating more feints into his offense. In this instance, he feints and gets August to react. He then capitalizes on it, landing a jab. Here we see Jake circle and use a foot feint, drawing a parry attempt from August and allowing him to land an easy jab. Constructing a win often involves stringing together micro interactions like these, but it's also important in the broader scheme for building up your ring IQ, figuring out what works, what doesn't. Jake also did good work mixing up his attacks to the head and to the body. He also showed us a solid jab, and particularly worked that double jab. The most important punch in boxing isn't as much about size and reach as it is about timing, and Jake is continuing to sharpen up his timing on that crucial weapon. Speaking of the jab and its importance, let's talk about the knockout. The KO was sexy, there's no way around it. Jake threw a jab, did a nice job taking his head off the center line, and kept that jab extended just for a bit, for another beat, to maintain his range and contact with the target, but also importantly to distract and blind while he fires the rear uppercut through the middle. And just like that, August felt the heat. He never saw that uppercut thanks to the jab. He did get caught by some good counter rights. There's of course some areas to improve. Now look, at the end of the day, no offense to him, I'm not terribly impressed by Andre August. He's 35 years old, had a 10-1 record going into the contest, but 3 of the guys that he beat were making their pro boxing debut, 2 of the guys had only 2 fights, and if we look at the combined win-loss record of all his opponents prior to fighting Jake Paul, that record comes out to 34-65. But what I'm more concerned about is how did Jake look in the ring? How did he perform? How did he use his feet? How did he manage his distance? How did he construct and set up his offense? And yes, it would be harder to do those things against higher level opponents, but this is what you do when you're building yourself up. This is how you gain experience, how you cut your teeth, how you build confidence. Professional fighters, especially if they didn't have really much of an amateur career, they'll have lots, even dozens, of fights against so-called tomato cans to build themselves up. So why can't Jake? He's not a dumb kid. He's said how the first phase of his boxing career was about selling pay-per-views, about making a splash. He says now, this phase of his boxing career is about grinding it out. It's about contending for a world title. I don't know if he's ever gonna get there, but he's still just 26 years old, athletically gifted, and seemingly dedicated. He's brought more eyes to boxing, invested money in the sport, started his own promotional company, promoted women's boxing, and there's more things that he's done and is doing, but I'm not going to get into all of it, alright? I'm not here to shine his balls, I'm not here to be his PR firm, but at the end of the day, I love this sport. I love boxing, and he's shown real respect to the sport in various ways. Other boxers, both active and retired, have recognized that. You want to know who's really disrespecting boxing? incompetent and/or corrupt judges who rob opportunities and careers from fighters, promoters who refuse to make the big fights the sport desperately needs, organizations that will strip one fighter of a title and at the same time let another one keep one seemingly indefinitely while they're inactive, or organizations that will just materialize titles out of nowhere and dilute the importance of the belts. The upshot? I don't know if Jake Paul will truly ever be able to contend for a world title, but he's got a good story, and he's making the right moves. So at this point, I'm rooting for him, unless and until he gives me real reason not to. And that right there is Harry's hook. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you care about Jake Paul's journey, and I don't really blame you if you don't, how do you feel about his skill level at this point? How do you feel about his impact on boxing? And do you believe him when he says that he's in it for the long haul?